The mountain wind cut through Isolde's thin ceremonial robe like teeth through flesh. She kept her eyes fixed on the frozen ground as rough hands dragged her forward, her bare feet leaving bloody prints in the frost. Around her, the entire Shadowmere pack had gathered in a circle, their excited whispers rising like smoke in the dawn air. "Move, Omega," growled one of her escorts, shoving her hard enough that she stumbled. Her knees hit the packed snow, sending fresh pain through already bruised joints. "Let her crawl," someone called from the crowd. "It's more fitting." Laughter rippled through the assembly, ugly and sharp. Isolde pushed herself back to her feet, wrapping the tattered ceremonial robe tighter around her shoulders. The fabric, once white, was now stained with dirt and blood from the 3-day preparation ritual. 3 days of fasting, of purification, of being reminded exactly what she was: nothing. At the center of the sacred grove, the ancestral stone rose like a black tooth against the pale sky. 20 feet of polished obsidian, carved with runes so old their meaning had been forgotten generations ago. This was where alphas were confirmed, where true mates were revealed, where the moon goddess herself was said to speak to those worthy of her attention, and where omegas were formally rejected. "Behold!" Alpha Roderick Vale's voice boomed across the clearing. He stood beside the stone in his ceremonial armor, every inch the pack's supreme leader. The silver chains of his office caught the weak morning light. "We gather to witness the ritual of assessment." Isolde's stomach clenched. They called it assessment, but everyone knew what it really was: a public confirmation of her worthlessness, the formal ceremony that would strip her of even the basic rights an Omega possessed. After today, she would be less than the lowest slave. "Bring forward the rejected one," Roderick commanded. Her escorts yanked her forward, forcing her to her knees before the stone. The ancient obsidian loomed above her, its surface so dark it seemed to swallow light. She could feel its cold radiating outward, seeping into her bones. "Isolde Wren," Roderick announced, his voice dripping with disdain. "Omega of no bloodline, daughter of traitors, you have been tested and found wanting. 3 alphas have rejected your bond. No wolf answers your call. The pack has voted. You are sentenced to severance." Gasps echoed through the crowd, though whether from shock or delight, Isolde couldn't tell. Severance, the complete cutting of pack bonds, was worse than death. It meant existing as a ghost, seen but not acknowledged, alive but not living. "Unless," Roderick paused dramatically, "the ancestral stone accepts you." More laughter. The stone hadn't glowed for anyone in over a century, and certainly never for an Omega. This was just another part of her humiliation, forcing her to touch the stone and have it confirm what everyone already knew: that she was nothing. "Place your hand upon it," Roderick ordered. Isolde looked up at the monolithic stone, her vision blurring with unshed tears. Just beyond it, she caught sight of movement in the shadows between the trees. A figure in chains, forced to kneel at the grove's edge. Even from this distance, she could see he was massive, his broad shoulders straining against iron shackles. Their eyes met across the clearing. Thane Calder, the mysterious alpha who'd appeared in their territory 2 weeks ago, claiming diplomatic immunity from the northern wastes. Roderick had immediately arrested him as a spy, and tomorrow he would face execution. But right now his storm-gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made her forget the cold. There was something in his gaze. Not pity, which she would have hated, but recognition. As if he saw past the dirt and degradation to something deeper. "Now!" Roderick snarled, grabbing her wrist and slamming her palm against the stone. The world exploded into silver light. Isolde screamed as power surged through her, ancient and wild and absolutely overwhelming. The stone beneath her palm grew warm, then hot, then blazing. Silver fire raced up her arm and through her body, rewriting every cell, every breath, every heartbeat. The ceremonial ground erupted into chaos. Wolves who had been laughing moments before now cowered and whimpered. Several shifted involuntarily, their human forms unable to contain their terror. The silver light pouring from the stone was so bright it turned night to day, shadows fleeing before its radiance. Impossible. Roderick staggered backward, his face pale with shock. You're just an Omega. You're nothing. Words appeared on the stone surface, burning with silver fire in the ancient tongue. But everyone understood them. The knowledge pressed directly into their minds, undeniable and absolute. The true Luna rises. The false Alpha falls. The covenant is broken. The covenant is remade. Isolde tried to pull her hand away, but it was fused to the stone. Power continued to pour into her, filling spaces she didn't know existed, awakening something that had been sleeping in her blood. Her Omega scent, barely noticeable before, suddenly exploded outward with such force that every unmated wolf in 100 yards groaned with want. "Stop her!" Roderick roared. "Pull her away!" 3 guards rushed forward, but the moment they touched her, they were blown backward by an invisible force. Silver light gathered around Isolde like armor, protecting her as the stone continued its work. Through the blinding radiance, she saw Thane struggling against his chains. His eyes had gone full wolf, golden and wild. A sound tore from his throat, primal and possessive, a claiming howl that made every wolf present bare their throats in submission. Everyone except Roderick. "Kill her!" the Alpha commanded, drawing his ceremonial blade. "She's a witch! An abomination!" He lunged forward, the silver knife aimed at her exposed throat. Time seemed to slow. Isolde saw death coming but couldn't move, her hand still locked to the stone. She closed her eyes, waiting for the blade to bite. The strike never came. A massive black wolf crashed into Roderick, sending him flying. Where Thane had been chained now stood only broken iron. He'd partially shifted, something that should have been impossible, maintaining his wolf's head and claws on a human body. "You dare defend the Omega!" Roderick seethed, wiping blood from his mouth. Thane's response was to position himself between Isolde and the pack, his partial shift rippling with barely contained violence. When he spoke, his voice was distorted by fangs but clear enough. "Touch the true Luna, and I'll paint this sacred ground with your blood." "She's not," Roderick began. The stone pulsed once more, and suddenly Isolde could move. She pulled her hand away, gasping as the connection broke. But the silver light didn't fade. Instead, it sank into her skin, making her glow from within like a fallen star. When she stood, every wolf, even Roderick, took an involuntary step back. "The stone has chosen," came a raspy voice from the crowd. Ancient Iona Briar, the pack's eldest mystic, hobbled forward on her walking stick. "For the first time in 3 centuries, we have a true Luna." "This proves nothing," Roderick spat, though his voice shook. "The stone is corrupted. She's corrupted it with dark magic." His words cut off in a strangled gasp. Everyone turned to stare as silver marks began appearing on Isolde's skin. Not random patterns, but specific runes that matched those on the ancestral stone. They blazed across her arms, her throat, her forehead, marking her as something beyond Alpha or Omega. But that wasn't what silenced Roderick. It was Thane's reaction. The mysterious Northern Alpha had dropped to one knee, his partial shift melting back to human form. When he raised his head, his storm-gray eyes held a mixture of awe and hunger that made Isolde's newly awakened power sing. "My Luna," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "I've searched for you for so long." Before anyone could respond, Thane moved. Not toward Isolde, but toward Roderick, who was backing away with his ceremonial blade still clutched in his hand. "You knew," Thane growled, his human form somehow more terrifying than his wolf. "You knew what she was. That's why you arranged the rejections, poisoned the other alphas against her, tried to force the severance." "Lies!" Roderick snarled, but the guilt in his scent betrayed him. The silver marks on Isolde's skin flared brighter, and suddenly she could smell it too. Deception, fear, and underneath it all, a toxic jealousy that had been festering for years. Knowledge flooded her mind, pulled from the stone's ancient memory. "My parents," she gasped. "You killed them." The pack erupted in shocked whispers. Roderick's face went white. "They were traitors," he said quickly. "They conspired with northern wolves. They discovered the prophecy," Isolde interrupted, her voice carrying new authority that made wolves whimper. "A true Luna would rise from the lowest Omega. You've been systematically destroying Omega bloodlines for 20 years. Thane snarled, taking another step toward Roderick. "In the north, we protect our Omegas. They're sacred. But here?" He looked around at the assembled pack with disgust. "You let this pretender turn you into monsters." "Enough!" Roderick raised his blade. "I am Alpha here. I decide." The ancestral stone cracked. The sound was like thunder, making the earth shake. A fissure ran down its center, leaking silver light like blood. From within came a voice that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the soul. "The false Alpha has broken sacred law. The true Luna must choose, claim or cleanse." Isolde didn't understand what that meant, but her body did. Power surged through her, demanding release. She could feel it building, ready to explode outward and potentially destroy everything in its path. Terror gripped her. She had no idea how to control this force. "I can't," she whispered, silver tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how—" Thane was suddenly there, his large hands gently cupping her face. "Look at me," he commanded softly. "Breathe with me." She met his storm-gray eyes and found herself matching his breathing. In, out, in, out. The power still raged, but his presence gave her an anchor. "You need to discharge it," he said urgently. "The stone gave you too much too fast. You have to claim someone to share the burden, or it will consume you." "Claim?" His thumb traced her cheekbone with surprising tenderness. "Bite someone. Create a mate bond. It's the only way to survive when—" A blade pierced his shoulder from behind. Thane roared in pain as Roderick twisted the ceremonial knife. "If she dies from power overload, everything goes back to normal," the Alpha hissed. "The stone's magic dies with her." Rage like nothing Isolde had ever felt consumed her. The silver marks on her skin turned molten, and she heard her own voice speaking words in the ancient tongue, words she'd never learned but somehow knew. Thane collapsed forward, blood soaking his torn shirt. But as he fell against her, his mouth found her ear. "Claim me. Let me carry half your burden. Trust me, little Luna." The power inside her had reached critical mass. She could feel her cells beginning to break down, unable to contain the divine energy. Around them, wolves were fleeing, sensing the impending explosion. All except Roderick, who stood watching with cruel satisfaction, waiting for her to die. Isolde looked down at Thane, who despite his wound was still trying to shield her with his body. This stranger who'd defended her, who'd broken free of chains for her, who was offering to bind his life to hers without hesitation. "Together," she whispered. Then she bit him. Not where a normal claiming bite would go, the junction of neck and shoulder, but directly over his heart. Her new fangs, longer and sharper than any Omegas should be, pierced skin and muscle until she tasted blood that sparkled with Alpha power. The moment their essences mixed, the world exploded for the second time that morning. But this explosion was different. Instead of random destruction, the power flowed between them in a circuit, each pass purifying and strengthening it. Thane's Alpha energy rose to meet her Luna force, not submitting but harmonizing, creating something entirely new. He was biting her too, she realized dimly. His fangs in her throat where her scent glands released wave after wave of transformed Omega pheromones. The double claiming, something from legend, supposedly impossible, was rewriting the very laws of their nature. Through their new bond, she felt everything. His memories, searching for 3 years after receiving a vision from northern shamans about a hidden Luna. His fury at finding her about to be destroyed, his absolute certainty that she was his destiny. And he felt hers. Years of abuse, loneliness, the constant rejection, but also her hidden strength, her refusal to break, the power she'd unconsciously suppressed to survive. When they finally pulled apart, gasping and blood-drunk, the sacred grove had transformed. Every tree within 50 feet had sprouted silver leaves. The cracked ancestral stone was healing, its fissures sealing with veins of pure moonlight. And Roderick was on his knees, his face twisted in agony as silver marks, different from Isolde's. These looked like chains wrapped around his throat and wrists. "What did you do?" he gasped. Isolde stood, pulling Thane up with her, their blood still on each other's lips, their bond humming with shared power. "We chose," she said simply. "Claim over cleanse. But the stone has its own justice." The silver chains around Roderick's throat and wrists weren't just marking him, they were draining him. Isolde could see it happening, watch his alpha strength being slowly siphoned away like water from a broken cup. "Please," he gasped, reaching toward her. "You don't understand what you've done. Without an alpha, the pack will have its true Luna," Thane interrupted, his voice rough from their claiming. The wound Roderick had inflicted was already healing, silver light knitting flesh back together. And her mate. The remaining pack members, those who hadn't fled in terror, were slowly creeping back toward the grove. Some crawled on their bellies in submission. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they had witnessed. Young Lena, Isolde's only friend, though Isolde had always told her to stay away for her own safety, pushed through the crowd. "Isolde, is it really you?" Before Isolde could answer, her body convulsed. The claiming had stabilized the power, but it hadn't stopped her transformation. She could feel her bones beginning to reshape, her muscles tearing and rebuilding. But this wasn't like a normal shift. This was something far more fundamental. "No," Thane growled, pulling her against him. "Too soon. Your body needs time to adjust." Through gritted teeth, Isolde managed, "Don't think I have a choice." Her spine arched and she screamed as wings, actual wings, burst from her shoulder blades. Not bird wings, but something that looked like they were made of condensed moonlight, translucent and silver and impossible. The Luna's true form. Iona breathed in awe. "I thought it was just a legend." Roderick tried to crawl away, but the silver chains held him in place. "Monster," he spat. "She's becoming a monster." "No," Thane snarled. "She's becoming what you tried to prevent, what you murdered her parents to stop." Through the pain of transformation, Isolde heard something else. Whispers from the stone, secrets pouring directly into her mind, the truth about everything. "The northern shamans," she gasped, her voice distorting as her vocal cords changed. "They didn't send you here for me. They sent you here for... Thane's arms tightened around her. "Don't speak. Save your strength." But the knowledge demanded to be spoken. The corruption. Roderick hasn't just been killing Omegas, he's been harvesting them. Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Iona looked stunned. "Harvesting?" Lena whispered. Isolde's partially transformed hand pointed at Roderick. The silver chains reacted to her gesture, glowing brighter, forcing him to his feet like a marionette. "Show them," she commanded, and her voice carried the full authority of the stone. "Show them what you really are." Roderick's form flickered like a bad illusion. For a moment, two shapes occupied the same space, the strong alpha everyone knew, and something else. Something wrong. "Corvin," Thane breathed. "Corvin Ashen, the Northern Waste's most wanted criminal. The illusion shattered completely. Where Roderick had stood, a different man appeared. Skeletal thin, with black veins visible under paper-white skin. His true scent, decay and dark magic, made several wolves vomit. "Impossible," someone cried. "We've known Roderick for 30 years. "You've known what I wanted you to know," Corvin laughed, black blood dripping from his mouth. "The real Roderick Vale died decades ago. I've been feeding on your pack's Omega essence to maintain his form. And I would have succeeded in my great work if this bitch hadn't—" Isolde moved faster than thought. Her partially transformed body, part human, part wolf, part something divine, crossed the space between them in a blink. Her clawed hand wrapped around his throat. "Every Omega you killed," she said softly. "I can feel them through the stone. 27 souls. They're screaming for justice." "Kill me then," Corvin sneered. "Add murder to your list of sins. True Luna. Show your pack what you really are. A monster like me." The temptation was overwhelming. The power inside her wanted to destroy him, to burn away every trace of his existence. She could feel Thane through their bond, ready to support whatever decision she made. But something else stirred in her consciousness. Not the stone's ancient wisdom or her newfound Luna powers, but something simpler. Her mother's voice, from years ago. "Strength isn't about how hard you can hit, little star. It's about knowing when not to." "No." Isolde released him, stepping back. "Death would be mercy." She raised her hands, and the silver marks on her skin rearranged themselves into new patterns. Words in the ancient tongue flowed from her lips, and the ancestral stone resonated with each syllable. "I name you Packless. I name you Powerless. I name you Forgotten. The Omega souls you stole will be your wardens. You will live, Corvin Ashen, but you will live as they died, alone, afraid, and helpless." The silver chains around him brightened to blinding intensity. When the light faded, Corvin had changed. His stolen alpha power was completely gone. Worse than Omega, he was human, magicless, scentless, effectively invisible to wolf senses. "No!" he screamed, clawing at his own skin. "You can't do this. I am eternal. I am—" His words cut off as two massive wolves emerged from the forest. Northern wolves, Isolde realized, recognizing their unusual gray-white coloring. "We've been tracking him for 5 years," one said after shifting to human form. "Thank you, True Luna, for succeeding where we failed." They dragged the screaming Corvin away, and Isolde knew with cold certainty she would never see or hear of him again. "Isolde," Thane's voice brought her back to the present. "The transformation." She looked down at herself. The wings had fully manifested and her body had stabilized into something between forms. She was still recognizably herself, but more enhanced, divine. "The pack," she said, turning to face the assembled wolves. "You have a choice. Accept a Luna who is different, who will change everything you thought you knew about pack hierarchy, or leave. I won't force." Every single wolf dropped to their knees, baring their throats in submission. "Our Luna," they said in unison, and she could feel the pack bond snapping into place, clean and strong and nothing like Corvin's corrupted connections. "Our Luna who saved us," Iona added, tears streaming down her ancient face. "Who exposed the false alpha, who chose mercy over vengeance." Thane's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. Through their bond, she felt his pride, his awe, and underneath it all, a love so profound it took her breath away. "Ready to rebuild?" he asked softly. Isolde looked at her pack, then at the ancestral stone which pulsed with gentle approval, and finally at the man who'd helped her claim her destiny. "Together," she said, and meant it. But as the sun broke through the clouds, Bathing the grove in natural light for the first time that morning, Isolde noticed something that made her blood run cold. The silver marks on her skin were moving, rearranging themselves into a new message. The first trial is complete. 5 more await. The pack house felt wrong without Roderick's oppressive presence. Isolde stood in what had been the Alpha's strategy room, studying maps marked with red X's, locations where Omegas had vanished over the years. 27 souls, all labeled as runaways or accidents. "You should rest," Thane said from the doorway. His concern pulsed through their bond like warm honey. "The transformation took everything from you." "I can feel them," Isolde whispered, her fingers tracing the marks. "The murdered Omegas. They're not gone. Not completely. They're trapped somewhere between life and death." Before Thane could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Shouting, snarling, and then a piercing scream that made Isolde's new wings manifest involuntarily. They rushed to the courtyard to find chaos. A young Omega, barely 16, was convulsing on the ground, silver light crackling across her skin like lightning, the same silver as Isolde's marks. "Stay back," Iona commanded the growing crowd. "Don't touch her." But Isolde was already moving, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The moment her hands touched the girl, visions slammed into her mind. A secret room beneath the pack house, dozens of glass containers filled with glowing essence, Corvin extracting power from terrified Omegas, but one container pulsing differently, sealed with different runes. Inside, a figure suspended in silver liquid. Alive, but sleeping. "There's someone else," Isolde gasped, pulling back from the vision. Someone Corvin was hiding. The Omega girl's eyes snapped open, but when she spoke, it wasn't her voice. "Free, the Guardian, before the moon sets, or all Omegas die." Then she collapsed, breathing but unconscious. "What Guardian?" Thane demanded, but Isolde was already moving, following the vision's pull toward the pack house's lower levels. They descended through passages she'd never known existed, each level older than the last. The walls changed from modern stone to ancient rock carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The air grew thick with magic, not the clean silver of the stone, but something diseased. "I smell death," Thane growled, partially shifting in response to the threat. "No," Isolde corrected, her Luna senses parsing the supernatural emanations. "Suspended death, prevented death, forced life." The passage ended at a door of black iron, covered in chains that reeked of Corvin's magic, but the moment Isolde touched them, they crumbled to rust. Inside was worse than the vision had shown. Glass cylinders lined the walls, each containing a faintly glowing essence, the extracted life force of murdered Omegas. They pulsed in rhythm, like a grotesque heartbeat. But at the room's center stood something different. A crystal coffin filled with silver liquid, and inside, "Moon Goddess," Iona breathed behind them. The old mystic had followed despite her age. "That's Cale Winters, the last true alpha." Isolde stared at the man suspended in the crystal. Even unconscious, he radiated power, not the corrupted dominance of false alphas like Corvin, but something pure. His dark hair floated in the silver liquid, and strange marks covered his skin. Not like hers, but complementary. Where hers were silver, his were gold. "He disappeared 50 years ago," Iona continued. "The night before, he was to take his place as High Alpha of all packs. We were told he ran away, unable to handle the responsibility." Corvin imprisoned him, Isolde realized. A true alpha would have sensed his deception immediately. She pressed her palms against the crystal, and pain exploded through her skull. Images flooded her mind. Not visions this time, but memories. Cale's memories, preserved in the prison that held him, discovering Roderick dead, Corvin standing over the body, black magic swirling around him. fighting, but being overwhelmed by dark sorcery. The moment of imprisonment, Corvin's mocking laugh. Sleep, true alpha. Sleep while I destroy everything you swore to protect. But there was more. In those final moments before the suspended animation took hold, Kale had done something. Cast some kind of spell, tied to the ancestral stone itself. A safeguard. A protection that would activate when a true Luna emerged, Isolde breathed. He's been waiting for me. We have to free him, Thane said, examining the crystal. But this magic is beyond anything I've seen. Isolde's marks flared, the message that had appeared after Corvin's defeat. 5 more trials await, suddenly made sense. This was the second trial. It requires a sacrifice, she said, the knowledge flowing from the stone through their connection. To free a life wrongly imprisoned, a life must be willingly given. No, Thane snarled, pulling her away from the crystal. We just found each other. I won't lose you. Not death, Iona interrupted, studying the runes around the coffin's base. Life force. Years of life. The Luna would have to give up decades of her existence to break the spell. How many decades? Isolde asked quietly. Iona's calculations made the old woman pale. 50 years. 1 for each year he's been imprisoned. The room fell silent. 50 years was nothing to a normal wolf who could live for centuries. But Isolde had just transformed. Her body was still stabilizing. Giving up that much life force could kill her. Or worse, revert her transformation, turning her back into the powerless Omega she'd been. There has to be another way, Thane said desperately. There is, a new voice said from the doorway. They spun to find Lena standing there, but her expression was different. Older, knowing. And her eyes were glowing with the same silver as Isolde's marks. Lena? Isolde stepped toward her friend. What? I'm not really 16, Lena said softly. I'm one of them. One of the murdered Omegas. Corvin killed me 20 years ago, but I didn't pass on. I've been hiding in this borrowed body, waiting. Waiting for what? For you. Lena, or the spirit wearing Lena's form, moved to the glass cylinders containing the Omega essences. We've all been waiting, and we've been preparing. Each of us saved a year of our stolen lives, hiding it from Corvin. 27 Omegas, 27 years. It's not enough to fully free the true Alpha, but combined with 23 years from me, Isolde said slowly, it would be exactly 50. No, Thane and Iona said simultaneously. But Isolde was already moving toward the crystal coffin. She understood now. This wasn't just about freeing Kyle. This was about redemption, for the murdered Omegas, for the corrupted pack, for herself. Together, she said, echoing what had become her motto. We do this together. The ghost in Lena's body smiled. Together. One by one, the glass cylinders began to crack. Silver essence flowed out, not dissipating but gathering, swirling around Isolde like a constellation of lost souls. She felt them all, their names, their dreams, their stolen futures. We offer our saved years freely, they spoke through Lena. Take them, true Luna, use them. Isolde pressed her hands to the crystal and opened herself to the Omega spirits. Power flooded through her, not violent like the stone's gift, but gentle, warm, loving. 27 years of preserved life flowed into her, and then through her, into the crystal. Now my turn, she whispered. She reached deep into her core, to the well of life force that every wolf carried. 23 years, nearly a quarter century of existence. She grabbed it and pulled. The pain was indescribable. Every cell in her body screamed as decades of life were ripped away. She felt herself aging, weakening, her newly gained power flickering like a candle in wind. Through their bond, she felt Thane's agony as he experienced her pain secondhand. He tried to share it, to take some of the burden, but this sacrifice had to be hers alone. Please, she gasped to any power that might be listening. Let this be enough. The crystal coffin exploded. Silver liquid erupted outward in a wave that knocked everyone to their feet. When Isolde's vision cleared, Cale Winters stood before them, gasping and disoriented but very much alive. His golden eyes found hers immediately. "True Luna," he said, his voice hoarse from decades of silence. "You came." Then his gaze shifted to something behind her, and his expression turned to horror. "Look out!" But the warning came too late. Pain exploded through Isolde's back as something pierced between her wings. She looked down to see a blade protruding from her chest, covered in her silver blood. "Did you think," Corvin's voice hissed in her ear, "that I wouldn't have contingencies?" Isolde fell forward, the blade still buried in her chest. Through her dimming vision she saw Corvin, but not Corvin. This was someone else wearing his face, moving, with his mannerisms. "Blood clone," Cale snarled, golden light erupting from his marks. "You bastard! You split yourself." "Insurance," the clone laughed. "The northern wolves took my primary body, but I've had this one sleeping beneath the pack house for 30 years, waiting for someone to be stupid enough to free you and weaken themselves in the process." Thane's roar shook the entire chamber. He shifted fully, his massive wolf form charging at the clone with murderous intent. But Corvin's duplicate moved with unnatural speed, shadow stepping away, while pulling the blade from Isolde's back. She screamed, silver blood pooling beneath her. The wound wasn't healing. The blade had been coated with something that prevented her accelerated healing. "Wolfsbane concentrate mixed with liquefied iron," the clone said conversationally, "and just a touch of void essence. Even a true Luna can't heal from that." "I'll kill you," Thane snarled, shifting back to human form to cradle Isolde against him. Through their bond, she felt his desperate terror. "You could try," the clone agreed, "but every second you waste on me is a second she's dying. And look." He gestured to the walls where the broken cylinders had been. "The Omega spirits are fading. Without their containers or a host, they'll dissipate within minutes. Save them or save her. Choose, true Luna." Isolde coughed, silver blood staining her lips. The 27 Omega spirits swirled around her in distress, their forms already becoming translucent. "Don't," she whispered to them. "Don't fade. Find hosts. Live again." "We can't," Lena's voice was breaking. "Without you anchoring us, we'll just possess innocence, become parasites." "Then anchor to me temporarily," Cale said suddenly. The true Alpha's golden marks flared. "I have enough power to hold you until we find a solution." "That much spiritual energy would burn you out," Iona protested. "Maybe," Cale agreed. "Or maybe two trues working together can do what one alone cannot." He looked at Isolde. "If you can stabilize them, I can house them." The clone laughed. "Beautiful. Watch them scramble to save everyone while you bleed out. This is better than killing you myself." Isolde forced herself to focus through the agony. The Omega spirits, Cale's offer, her fading life force. There had to be a way to save everyone. Then she felt it. The bond with Thane, pulsing with his life force. Not just his emotions, but his actual vitality. And beneath that, something else. Connections to every pack member who had submitted to her in the grove. "The pack bonds," she gasped. "I can distribute them through the pack bonds." "That's never been done," Iona said. "The strain could kill every wolf connected to you." "Or," Isolde managed, "it could save everyone." She reached out with her Luna authority, feeling every pack bond like a silver thread. 137 wolves, all connected to her. She could feel their confusion, their fear, their growing awareness that something was wrong with their new Luna. "My pack." She spoke through the bonds, her mental voice weak but clear. "I need your help." Will you each carry a small piece of a murdered Omega's spirit? Just until we find them new bodies? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every single wolf accepted without hesitation. Isolde turned to the fading spirits. Go. One fragment to each pack member. They'll keep you safe. The Omega spirits hesitated, then began to divide, becoming streams of silver light that flowed up through the ceiling, seeking their temporary hosts. No! The clone lunged forward, dark magic crackling around his hands. Kyle intercepted him, golden power meeting shadow in an explosion that shook the foundations. 50 years I waited, the true Alpha growled. 50 years planning what I'd do to you. They fought with a viciousness that transcended normal combat. Reality warped around them as opposing magics clashed. But Isolde couldn't watch. Her vision was going dark, her body growing cold despite Thane's desperate warmth. Stay with me, he begged, his tears falling on her face. Please, little Luna, stay with me. Through their bond, she felt him pushing his own life force into her, trying to replace what the poisoned blade had stolen. But it wasn't enough. The void essence was consuming her from within. Thane, she whispered. The bond. You have to break it. Never. If you don't, when I die, you'll die too. Then we die together. A new voice cut through the chamber. Perhaps there's another option. Everyone turned to see a figure descending through the hole the Omega spirits had created. A woman in robes of pure starlight, her face achingly beautiful and terrifyingly ancient. The moon goddess herself. Even the clone stopped fighting, falling to his knees in involuntary submission. My wayward children, the goddess said, her voice like silver bells. So much pain, so much loss. All because one man couldn't accept his place. She moved to Isolde, kneeling beside her with infinite grace. True Luna, you've passed the second trial, sacrificing without hesitation. But the third trial approaches, and you're dying. Save her, Thane pleaded. Please, take my life instead. The goddess smiled sadly. That's not how it works, young wolf. But she studied Isolde's wound, then the clone, then Kyle. There is something unique here. A true Luna, a true Alpha, and an abomination that shouldn't exist. 3 forces that could, if properly aligned. She stood, her robes swirling with captured starlight. Blood clone of Corvin Ashen, you have a choice. Die now, painfully and permanently, or give your life force to save the true Luna you poisoned. The clone laughed bitterly. Why would I save her? Because, the goddess said softly, the real Corvin is being tortured by the northern wolves as we speak. Every agony he experiences, you feel a shadow of. It will never end. They're very creative, those northern wolves. But if you sacrifice yourself willingly, I'll end his suffering. One clean death for both of you. The clone's face went white. Through whatever connection he shared with his original, he was indeed feeling echoes of torture. You swear it? He asked desperately. You'll end it? I swear on my eternal light. The clone looked at Isolde, bleeding out in Thane's arms. I spent so long hating Omegas, he said quietly, fearing what they could become. But watching you today, maybe I was the weak one all along. He placed his hand over his heart and spoke words in the ancient tongue. Black light flowed from him, not attacking this time, but offering. His life force, corrupted but vast, began transferring to Isolde. Tell the real me, he gasped as he began to fade, that in the end, one version of him chose right. The clone dissolved into shadow, then light, then nothing. Isolde gasped as the foreign life force flooded her system. It burned like acid, Corvin's darkness trying to corrupt her silver light. She writhed in Thane's arms, fighting not to let the darkness win. Together, Kale said suddenly, pressing his golden hands to her shoulders. True Alpha and true Luna, let me help purify it. His golden light met her silver, creating a cleansing fire that burned away Corvin's corruption while keeping the raw life force. Slowly, agonizingly, the wound began to close. When it was over, Isolde lay exhausted but alive in Thane's arms. The third trial, the moon goddess said approvingly. Accepting help from an enemy, transforming darkness into light. She began to fade. 3 trials down, 3 to go. But beware, the hardest tests aren't from outside threats, but from within. As the goddess vanished, Isolde noticed something new. Where the wound had been, a scar remained, but not an ugly one. It was silver and gold intertwined, marking where enemy essence had become part of her. We need to check on the pack, she said weakly. The Omega spirits are safe, Iona confirmed, helping her stand. I can sense them through the pack bonds, distributed but stable. But as they climbed back toward the surface, Isolde heard something that made her blood freeze. Howls, hundreds of them, coming from beyond their territory. What is that? She asked. Kale's expression was grim. Other packs. Word has spread about a true Luna rising. Some will come to worship you. He paused. Others will come to destroy what they see as a threat to the old ways. The Great Hall hadn't seen this many alphas in a century. They came from every direction. Northern packs, eastern territories, even the isolated western clans. Some knelt the moment they saw Isolde. Others stood with barely concealed hostility. 3 days had passed since the moon goddess's visitation, 3 days of delegations arriving, demanding to assess the new true Luna. They want to test me, Isolde said quietly to Thane as they watched from the upper balcony. To see if I'm really what the stone claimed. Let them try, he growled, possessive fury radiating through their bond. Below, she counted 15 different pack leaders, but one stood out. A massive female alpha with storm-gray eyes eerily similar to Thane's. Sister, Thane breathed. Your sister? Isolde turned to stare at him. You never mentioned, because I thought she was dead. Rava disappeared the same night I received my vision about you. The female alpha looked up, meeting Thane's shocked gaze with cold calculation. Hello, brother, she called out, her voice carrying easily through the hall. I hear you've bound yourself to an Omega pretending to be Luna. The hall erupted in whispers. Several alphas who'd been neutral moved closer to Rava, drawn by her challenge. Pretending? Isolde felt her marks flare with indignation. She descended the stairs slowly, letting her transformed presence fill the space. Her wings manifested without conscious thought, spreading wide and casting silver shadows. Several alphas stepped back involuntarily. I am Isolde Wren, she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. Named true Luna by the ancestral stone, claimed by my mate, blessed by the goddess herself. Who dares question this? I do, Rava stepped forward. The northern territories don't recognize Omega authority, no matter what ancient rocks say. The North sent me to find her, Thane snarled, moving to Isolde's side. The North sent you to investigate rumors, Rava corrected. Not to bind yourself to the first powered Omega you found. Kale emerged from the shadows where he had been observing. His presence made several alphas bare their throats instinctively. True Alpha recognizes true Luna, he said simply. That should end all debate. You've been gone 50 years, an Eastern Pack leader said. Imprisoned by one you trusted. Perhaps your judgment is compromised. The tension was suffocating. Isolde could feel violence building like a storm. One wrong word and the hall would become a battleground. Then Lena walked in, or rather, the Omega spirit wearing Lena's form. You want proof? The spirit said, its voice echoing with otherworldly power. Then see through the eyes of the dead. Silver light exploded from Lena's form, and suddenly the hall was filled with ghostly figures. 27 murdered Omegas stood among the living, visible to all. "We testify," they spoke in unison, "we who were slaughtered by false Alpha Corvin. We who were saved by true Luna Isolde. We who found shelter in her pack through her sacrifice. Is our testimony not enough?" Several alphas fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the supernatural display. But Rava stood firm, her expression unmoved. "Spirits can be deceived or coerced," she said. "I demand the right of challenge." The hall went silent. "You can't," Thane said, his voice deadly. "She just transformed. She nearly died 3 days ago." "Then she's too weak to be true Luna," Rava replied coldly. "The position requires strength." "I accept," Isolde said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at her. Through their bond, she felt Thane's desperate protest, but she pushed calm back at him. "But not the challenge you're thinking of," she continued. "You want to test strength? Let's test real strength, the strength to heal rather than harm." She gestured to the Omega spirits. 27 souls need new bodies. You brought 15 packs here. Surely among your numbers, you have volunteers willing to share themselves with these murdered innocents? Rava's eyes narrowed. "You want us to let spirits possess our wolves?" "Not possession. Integration. They would share the body. 2 souls in harmony. The Omega spirits would live again, and the hosts would gain their memories, their knowledge." "That's impossible," someone said. "The true Luna already did it with her entire pack," Kale pointed out. "Each member carries a fragment. But she's offering to help you do more. Full integration." "And if we refuse?" Rava asked. Isolde let her power unfurl, not aggressively, but as a simple statement of fact. The silver light that emanated from her was warm, healing, nothing like the oppressive dominance most alphas wielded. "Then you're not here to assess me," she said. "You're here to destroy what threatens your comfortable traditions, and that tells me everything about your true strength." An elderly Omega from the Eastern delegation suddenly stepped forward. "I volunteer." Everyone stared at the frail woman who could barely walk unassisted. "Maya, no," her pack leader said. "You're too old." "I'm dying," Maya interrupted. "My body fails more each day. But if I could share it with one who was murdered in youth, perhaps together we'd find balance." One of the Omega spirits drifted toward her, a young girl who'd been killed at 16. "I was Arya," the spirit whispered. "I never got to grow old. And I never got to be young again," Maya smiled. "Shall we try?" Isolde moved between them, her hands glowing with silver light. "This will hurt," she warned, "for both of you." "Living hurts," Maya said simply. "This is just a different pain." Isolde began the integration, pulling on knowledge she didn't fully understand. Instincts from her Luna nature, wisdom from the stone, fragments of the goddess's blessing. The 2 spirits began to merge, young and old finding balance. Maya's scream echoed through the hall, but it transformed into something else. Laughter. When the light faded, she stood straighter. Her hair now had streaks of auburn among the gray. Her eyes held depths of youth and age combined. "We are Maya Arya," she said, her voice a harmony of 2 tones. "We are one." The hall erupted in amazement. Even Rava looked stunned. "How?" the Northern Alpha demanded. "Because I'm not trying to dominate," Isolde said simply. "The old ways say alphas rule through strength, omegas submit through weakness. But what if there's another way? What if true strength comes from lifting others up?" One by one, more volunteers stepped forward. Not many, only 4 more, but enough to show that some believed. As Isolde helped each integration, she grew weaker but somehow also stronger. Each successful merger taught her something new about her power, but on the 5th integration, something went wrong. The moment her power touched the merging spirits, foreign magic slammed into her mind. Dark, familiar, and impossible. "Did you think," Corvin's voice echoed in her thoughts, "that I only had one contingency?" Isolde's scream brought everyone to their knees. Her marks turned black, spreading like poison across her skin. She convulsed, her wings flickering between silver and shadow. "What's happening?" Thane roared, trying to reach her but being repelled by crackling dark energy. Through her agony, Isolde realized the horrifying truth. The clone's life force, the one she'd absorbed to survive, had carried a curse. Corvin's final trap, waiting for the moment she'd be vulnerable while using her power. "He's trying to possess me from within," she gasped, using his own absorbed essence as a doorway. Kale's golden light flared as he tried to help, but the curse repelled him. "It's rooted too deep. It's part of her now." Through vision blurring with pain, Isolde saw Rava approaching. The Northern Alpha's expression was unreadable. "So weak," Rava said softly. "So easily corrupted." She raised her hand, claws extending. "No!" Thane lunged forward but was held back by Northern wolves who'd appeared from nowhere. "I'm saving everyone," Rava said. "A corrupted Luna will destroy all packs." As the claws descended toward her throat, Isolde had one last thought. The moon goddess had warned her. The hardest tests come from within. The darkness consumed her completely. Darkness. Not the absence of light, but a living thing with teeth and claws and Corvin's mocking laughter echoing endlessly. Isolde floated in a void that existed inside her own soul, watching helplessly as her body moved without her control. Through eyes that were hers but not hers, she saw Rava's claws stop inches from her throat. "Interesting," her voice said, but it was Corvin's cadence. "The Northern Alpha shows wisdom." Her body stood with unnatural grace, the black marks pulsing with malevolent life. Thane struggled against the Northern wolves holding him, his anguish burning through their bond like acid. "Get out of her!" he roared. "I'm afraid that's impossible," Corvin and Isolde said conversationally. "You see, she absorbed my essence willingly. I'm not possessing her. I'm becoming her. Soon, there will be no distinction between us." Inside the void, Isolde fought desperately against the encroaching darkness, but every struggle seemed to make it worse, like thrashing in quicksand. "Stop fighting," a familiar voice whispered. She turned, or thought she turned. Direction was meaningless here, to find the Omega spirits floating beside her. All 27, including the 5 who had successfully integrated. "How are you here?" she asked. "We're bound to you," Arya Maya said. "When you pulled us from death, you became our anchor. Where you go, we go, even into darkness." "I'm losing," Isolde whispered. "He's too strong." "No," another spirit said firmly. "He's not strong, he's desperate. Look closer." Isolde forced herself to truly observe the darkness. At first it seemed uniform, absolute. But then she noticed something. Cracks. Tiny fissures leaking. Silver light? The clone gave his life force willingly, Arya explained. That choice, that moment of redemption, it changed the nature of his essence. Corvin is trying to corrupt you with power that already chose good. Outside, her possessed body was speaking again. "Rava, sister of my host's mate, you came here to kill her, didn't you? The Northern Shaman sent you." Rava's expression didn't change. The shaman saw 2 futures. In one, a true Luna rises and changes everything for the better. In the other, a corrupted Luna destroys all packs. They sent me to ensure the right future. And which am I? That remains to be seen. Rava's eyes flicked to something behind Isolde's possessed form. "Kale. Now." The true Alpha moved faster than thought, his golden light slamming into Isolde's body from behind. But instead of attacking, he was feeding power into her. "What are you doing?" Corvin snarled through her mouth. "Something you'd never understand," Kale said calmly, trusting. Inside the void, Isolde felt Kale's power flooding in, not fighting the darkness but illuminating it. Suddenly she could see Corvin's true form. Not a massive shadow but a small, frightened thing, desperately trying to seem bigger than it was. "You're terrified," she realized. "You were always terrified. That's why you killed Omegas. You were afraid of what we could become." "Silence!" Corvin's mental voice was shrill. "I am eternal. I am—" "You're a parasite," Isolde interrupted, "but parasites need living hosts. And you made one mistake. You let a piece of yourself choose redemption. That clone's sacrifice? It created a crack in your perfect evil." She reached for that crack, not with force but with something else. Compassion. The same emotion that had made her save Thane at the auction. "I pity you," she said to the darkness. "All that power, all those years. And you never learned the simplest truth. Strength shared is strength multiplied." Outside, her possessed body convulsed. "What are you doing?" Corvin screamed. "What Omegas do best," Isolde said, her true voice breaking through. "We endure, we survive, and we protect our pack." She opened herself completely, not just to Kale's golden power or the Omega Spirit's support, but to every pack bond. 137 wolves, plus the visiting packs who had witnessed her integrations. She pulled on all of them, not taking, but asking. "Help me," she sent through every connection, not with power but with memory. "Send me one moment when someone weaker than you needed help, and you gave it freely." The response was overwhelming. A young alpha remembering carrying an injured Omega pup for miles. An elder who'd shared her last food with strangers. Warriors who'd chosen mercy over vengeance. Even Rava sent a memory, saving Thane from drowning when they were children, despite being smaller and weaker then. Each memory was a tiny light, insignificant alone. But together they became a constellation, surrounding Corvin's darkness with proof of what he'd never understood. "The strong protect the weak," Isolde said, standing now in the void not as an Omega or Luna, but as herself. "Not because we have to, because we choose to. And that choice, repeated 1,000 times, is what makes a pack." Corvin's darkness writhed, trying to maintain its hold. "You can't cast me out. I'm part of you now." "You're right," Isolde agreed. "I can't cast you out, but I can transform you." She grabbed the darkness, all of it, every bit of Corvin's essence, and pulled it close. But instead of fighting it, she embraced it. "No!" Corvin shrieked. "What are you—" "I'm doing what the clone did," she said. "Choosing redemption. Not for you. You're beyond that. But for the power itself. Power isn't good or evil. It's just power. And I choose to make this power serve life instead of death." Silver light exploded through the darkness, not destroying but transmuting. Corvin's consciousness shattered and dispersed, unable to maintain cohesion without hatred to hold it together. But the raw power remained, purified by her choice to transform rather than destroy. Isolde opened her eyes, her real eyes, and found herself on the great hall floor. The black marks were gone, replaced by something new, silver and gold intertwined with threads of shadow that had been cleansed of malice. "You did it," Thane breathed, crushing her against him. "You, impossible, incredible woman." "We did it," she corrected, looking around at all the faces, pack and strangers alike, all of us. Rava knelt beside them, and for the first time her expression showed approval. "The shamans were right. You are the true Luna from the good future." She paused. "But there's something else. Something they didn't tell you. Or couldn't see." "What?" Isolde asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "The reason so many packs came when word spread about you. It wasn't just to test you. Rava's expression grew grim. 3 days ago, every ancestral stone in every territory cracked simultaneously. They're all showing the same message. She pulled out a piece of parchment with words that made Isolde's blood run cold. The first Luna has risen. 5 more must follow. The ancient enemy wakes. The final war begins. First Luna? Isolde struggled to her feet. There are supposed to be 6? Legend says 6 true Lunas will rise in the final days, Kale said quietly. Each paired with a true alpha. Together, they'll face something that nearly destroyed the world once before. What enemy? Thane demanded. We don't know, Rava admitted. The records were destroyed. But? She hesitated. The northern shamans say they've felt something stirring beyond the veil, something that feeds on the absence of moonlight. Before anyone could respond, a young Omega burst into the hall, face pale with terror. The moon, she gasped. Come quickly, something's wrong with the moon. They rushed outside to find a sight that defied nature. The full moon hung in the sky, but a shadow was eating it. Not an eclipse, but something else, something with teeth. Where the shadow touched, the moon didn't darken but disappeared, leaving void. By the goddess, Iona whispered. The devourers, they're actually real. Devourers? Isolde asked, though she could feel her Luna instincts screaming in recognition and terror. Beings from before, the elderly mystic said. Before wolves, before the goddess, before light itself. They consume divine essence. And if the legends are true, the only thing that stopped them last time was 6 Lunas channeling the goddess's full power, Kale finished. But we only have 1. The shadow continued eating the moon, and with each bite Isolde felt her power diminishing. All around them, wolves were collapsing, their connections to lunar energy being severed. We need the other 5, Isolde said desperately. How do we find them? You don't, a new voice said. They turned to find the moon goddess herself standing among them, but she looked different, diminished, translucent, like she was fading. My children, she said weakly. I'm sorry. I thought we had more time. The devourers were supposed to sleep for another 1,000 years. What woke them? Rava demanded. The goddess looked at Isolde with infinite sadness. The rise of the first true Luna after centuries of absence. Your power called to them across the void. They know that if all 6 rise, they can be destroyed permanently, so they've come to prevent it. Then we fight, Thane said fiercely. With what? The goddess gestured to the being slowly consuming the moon. That's just their scout, their vanguard. The real force is gathering beyond the veil. So we find the other Lunas, Isolde said. Fast. 3 are already awakening, the goddess said. Your transformation triggered theirs. But they're scattered across the world, and without training, without their true alphas, they won't survive their power. Where? Kale asked. The goddess touched Isolde's forehead, and knowledge flooded in. Locations, faces, names. The desert of bones, the frozen wastes, the drowned cities, Isolde gasped. They're all in the Deadlands. Places where old magic is strongest, the goddess confirmed, but also where the veil is thinnest. The devourers will attack there first. Then we split up, Rava said. 3 teams, 3 Lunas. What about the other 2? Isolde asked. The goddess's form flickered, growing fainter. Unknown. Hidden. Perhaps not even born yet. But without all 6? She didn't need to finish. My light fails, the goddess whispered. The devourer feeds on divine essence, and I am very divine. I must withdraw completely or risk being consumed. You're on your own, my children. Wait! Isolde reached out. The 4th trial, the 5th, the 6th. What are they? The goddess smiled sadly. You've already passed the 4th, transforming evil into good. The 5th, is sacrifice without loss. The sixth. She was almost gone now. The sixth is accepting that not everyone can be saved. She vanished completely, and immediately the temperature dropped 20 degrees. The Devourer's shadow had consumed half the moon. "We leave at dawn," Isolde announced, her voice carrying new authority. "3 teams. We find the other Lunas, or everything ends." "And if the Devourers attack while we're separated?" someone asked. Isolde looked at the void eating the moon, then at Thane, feeling their bond pulse with shared determination. "Then we do what we've always done," she said. "We fight together, even when apart." She spread her wings wide, silver light emanating from every feather despite the diminishing moon. The assembled wolves, pack and visitors alike, dropped to their knees in unified submission. "I am Isolde Wren, true Luna of the Shadowmere Pack," she declared formally. "I call for the gathering of hunters, every pack, every wolf, every soul willing to stand against the dark. We run at dawn." The response was immediate. Howls rising from 100 throats, defiant against the thing eating their moon. But as Isolde stood there, accepting their allegiance, she couldn't shake the goddess's final words. Not everyone can be saved. Looking at Thane, at Kale, at all these wolves trusting her with their lives, she wondered who she would have to lose before this war was over. Above them, the Devourer's shadow paused in its consumption, as if sensing their defiance. Then, horrifyingly, the void spoke. Not with words, but directly into their minds. "We have waited, we have hungered. The feast of divine light begins. Your goddess flees, your moons will fall, your lunas will feed us." The shadow resumed eating, faster now, and Isolde realized with cold certainty that they weren't just racing to find the other lunas. They were racing against the complete consumption of everything that made them wolves. "Together," she whispered to Thane, who pulled her close. "Always," he replied, "no matter what comes." As dawn approached, though with half the moon gone, the night seemed endless, Isolde stood with her pack, her mate, her true alpha ally, and an army of wolves from across the territories. The real war hadn't even started yet. But looking at the faces around her, fierce, determined, unafraid, Isolde thought they might just have a chance. The ancestral stone in the grove pulsed once, sending out a call that echoed across every territory. "The first Luna rises, let the others awaken, let the hunt begin." In 3 distant lands, 3 women suddenly screamed as silver light erupted from their bodies, their transformations beginning. The race to save them, and the world, was on.